I'm sitting at the top of what is one of the principal fells in the English Lake District, like millions of people have done before me and millions of people will do long after my walking days are done. Unlike anywhere in the world with great mountain scenery, hiking is immensely popular here. And of all the things you can do in the Lake District, in Cumbria, in the national park itself, the principal reason people come here is this, the simple act of walking up a hill. But Lakeland is different to anywhere else in the world. As England's most spectacular scenery, you'd think it'd be steeped in its own mythology or history, but it's not. Its principal association is with a single man, whose name has become synonymous with this great place, and vice versa. A man who studied it in fascinating detail, who illustrated it from nearly every conceivable angle, who inspired millions of people to get out and do this, to just enjoy it. Born in 1907 in Blackburn, Lancashire, Alfred Wainwright left school at 13 to become an office boy at the Borough Engineers Department, before studying for many years to become an accountant with the council. Wainwright later described himself as a very shy youth, and his calm, considerate nature lent itself well to an early love of two important hobbies that would go on to define his life: walking and cartography. In 1930, at the age of 23, Wainwright travelled with his cousin Eric to Lakeland for a week's walking holiday. At the time, hiking and rambling as an activity was a much loved but incredibly difficult thing to do in some places. Virtually all of England's green spaces were privately owned and jealously guarded by the aristocracy. Many of the most stunningly beautiful parts of the British countryside were simply off limits, with armies of gamekeepers patrolling hills and moors, threatening anyone who dared venture across the land. In 1932, this would develop into the mass trespass at Kinder Scout, a left-wing action that led to the opening up of the countryside and the right to roam. Lakeland was slightly different, a mixture of tenant farmers, privately owned mountains, and a lot of mines, quarries and industry. Walking here for fun was possible in many places, especially high on the mountaintops and down by the lakesides, but there were many barriers. Nevertheless, it was undeniably England's most beautiful corner, and an aspirational destination for so many seeking greenery and nature. So where I am now is the first hill that Wainwright ascended in Lakeland, and got this spectacular view unfolding before him and his friend, what he later described as our first sight of mountains in tumultuous array across glistening waters, our awakening to beauty. Just over a decade later, Wainwright took a job in Kendal Council, moving to the town with his wife Ruth and son Peter. He'd stay there for the rest of his life, in close proximity to the land he had fallen in love with. On the 9th of November 1952, Wainwright began work on what would become his masterpiece, his life's work. These 7 pictorial guides for climbing the fells and mountains of Lakeland. Now, all of them he devised beforehand, meticulously planning each page, but they don't just contain information about which route to take to the top of the hill, but also these spectacular illustrations which Wainwright drew himself. So they contained maps, views, pictures of interesting things and a lot of history, but he also included pictures of the summits, which on a day like today might be a bit redundant, but on a misty day when the mist descends and you can't see the top of a hill, is actually a really crucial thing to know. And he also cleverly included a compass for what you could see at the top, including all the fells you could see and how far away they were, which when you're looking out at all that, sometimes it's hard to pick the different fells apart, so it's so useful. Across the 7 guides, Wainwright picked out 214 different fells across the area, splitting them into 7 distinct groups of their own. and he included all of the big ones: Helvellyn, Skiddaw, Coniston Old Man, Great Gable, and of course the Scaffells, the highest points in England. He also picked out fells that were remarkable from below, even if they weren't super high. Ridges, moorland tops, and little lumps and bumps that stand alone like islands and are accessible for everyone. And yes, while there are quite a few questionable inclusions, such as Longside, Watson's Dodd, and Mungrisdale Common, they are still all worth climbing. This is the top of one called Castle Crag, and it's the lowest of all the Wainwrights, all 214. This is the 214th highest one. And it makes you think, well, why did he bother including this one? Especially when you've got Scafell Pike and Helvellyn and Skiddaw, these big mountains. Why bother including this little piddly one? But then actually, you have a look at the view. I mean, look at that. Spectacular. And you can see exactly why he's included it. As Wainwright himself said, Castle Crag is the lump in the throat of Borrowdale, which is this valley here leading north towards Keswick and Derwent's Water there. It's defiant, it sticks out, it doesn't care about the other ridges and mountains around here. It does its own thing and it's got character, and it's that character that Wainwright recognised in all these fells, and you can see why he included all of them in his books. Wainwright tried to write a page a night after coming home from work, taking the whole project about 13 years to complete. But his research was the real time-consuming thing. Travelling about the area, often by bus, Wainwright climbed every fell from multiple angles, noting them all in his guides. Now, I started coming to the lakes on my own in my mid-20s, just to get away from the city. And I didn't even have an intention to climb any of the Wainwrights. In fact, I didn't really know much about the Wainwrights. But one of the first hills I did climb was called Haystacks, which is one of the shorter western fells. And it happens to be Wainwright's favourite. Then the next day I took the old corridor route to the top of Scafell Pike, just to say that I'd done it. And then on the way down I passed a load of old Wainwrights which I didn't really know were there, because I wasn't really interested in bagging them. Like I said, I didn't really know much about them. So I went back to the car, and then the next day I went home. And then the next year I wanted to do the same thing again, but this time I wanted to discover more of the actual Wainwrights. So I went out and bought myself a tick map of the Wainwrights to start actually bagging them, and these pictorial guides, and I've carried both with me ever since. And this is the first book he wrote, The Eastern Fells, which is over towards the Helvellyn range. And in the introduction, this quiet, reserved man suddenly opens up with this beautiful explanation of why he sat down and decided to start writing these books in the first place. Surely there is no other place in this whole wonderful world quite like Lakeland. No other so exquisitely lovely, no other so charming, no other that calls so insistently across a gulf of distance. And then he goes on about black-stockinged lambs, silver cascades dancing and leaping down bracken steeps, the symphonies of murmuring streams, the curling smoke from chimneys of the farm. I mean, I could go on and on. When people think of Lakeland, they think of Wordsworth, but nobody ever thinks of this working-class man who wrote as beautifully as any poet. An open agnostic, Wainwright wrote of the spiritual satisfaction of summiting a mountain, of escaping from the disappointments and unkindness of real life, and emerging into a new world, a better world. He also made the book slightly personal. He allowed himself to get grumpy about new roads being built, of motor cars bringing daywalkers, of monoculture plantations, and a Manchester corporation creating reservoirs to provide water to taps 100 miles away. But he also knew that all this had to be told through a personal tale. As an often solitary walker, like me, Wainwright knew that climbing hills is a deeply personal thing. It's an adventure and an escape, a chance to view life from a distance. Now I'm super lucky today because the weather is fantastic and the view is vast and wide. I'm actually at the top of one called Esk Pike, which is one of the Wainwrights and also part of the Scafell Massif. In fact, Scafell Pike is just over there, the mother of them all, the rooftop of England. And that is where I'll be going today, but not directly. You see, where I am now is my 213th Wainwright Fell. I've got one more to go. One I missed the last time I went up Scar Fell. It'll be the last one for me, number 214, after which I can say I bagged them all. And its name? Great End. Like many hundreds of people, I got sucked into bagging the Wainwrights after that second trip up here. But I didn't want to rush them like some people do. In fact, I wanted to make them last. 1 or 2 trips a year and the whole thing will probably take me the rest of my life. Which sounded fun. But as Wainwright wrote, all who truly love Lakeland are exiles when away from it. And so every time I passed through or was here on other business, I'd end up picking one off. And to be honest, I've been looking forward to this for years, the last one. But now it's here, I'm not actually sure how I feel about it. Following the success of his Lakeland guidebooks, Wainwright set his sights a little further afield, writing multiple books that took inspiration from the north, including a guidebook to the Pennine Way. He also devised the 190-mile-long coast-to-coast trail starting in St. Bees and ending in Robin Hood's Bay, which today is one of the most popular long-distance routes in Britain. But it's his 7 pictorial guides that he'll be forever remembered for. Beautifully illustrated and written, they've been inspiring people to bag Lakeland Fells for over 60 years. And Lakeland has changed massively in that time. This is no longer a land of small mines, lonely cottages and sleepy villages. It's a place of £1,000,000 houses, expensive health resorts, glamping and big brand outdoor shops. And all of this has transformed the simple act of walking. Today there's a frenzy of tour guides, hiking gatekeepers, imitation guidebooks, peak baggers and, these days, Instagram blaggers who, all for better or worse, seek to find profit in this landscape. Tourism here is bigger now than ever before, and that causes problems, from traffic, litter and pollution to an increase in people being rescued from mountainsides because they've not been prepared for the challenges ahead. But the pictorial guides cut through all of that. They challenge the idea that this landscape is a playground for us to exploit and not a very real, wonderful place for us to appreciate. Wainwright himself reflected on this in his final book. The fleeting hours of life for those who love the hills is quickly spent, but the hills are eternal. Alfred Wainwright died of a heart attack in 1991 at the age of 84. His ashes were scattered over innominate tarn on his favourite Lakeland fell of them all, Haystacks. And that's it, I've done it, number 214, and I honestly can't believe it. I don't know quite how to feel about it, but the view is magnificent, so I think I'm going to sit here and just try and scour my memory for some of the best moments of the last 214 fells over the years. But yeah, what a view. And I think my favourite thing about Wainwright is that he wasn't a big shouty TV presenter or an egotistical travel writer or somebody who demanded attention. He was just a deeply introverted person who just fell in love and wanted to write about it. And essentially that's what these pictorial guides are, just one long love letter to this beautiful natural landscape. But there's just something about these books, not just the illustrations, which are still unique by the way, but the honest sense that this is a man who loved what he was writing about and was motivated by nothing else. And that's what makes them authentic, and the reason why millions of copies of them have been sold over the years, and why they still inspire people to get out and discover all of this.